But I wanted to kind of touch on some of the giant mythology and lore in North America and around the world, and also some of the stories that we were told as kids and how they actually have some kind of truth to them. First, I'm going to quote from this book called Giants on Record. It's by Jim Rivera and Hugh Newman. And they totally break down. They go through all the ancient newspaper articles that bring up giants.
Wow.
And one of the actual ones I wanted to bring up was a story of Buffalo Bill. And now it says, the life of William F. Cody, known as Buffalo Bill, the famous hunter, scout, and guide, an autobiography in 1871. To finish the chapter, we have this strange account that occurred in 1871 in Wyoming from the legendary Buffalo Bill. We were in the Sand Hills scouting the Niburian country, and the Pawnee Indians brought us into camp one night. Some very large bones, of which a sergeant of the expedition pronounced to be the thigh bone of a human being. The Indians claimed that the bone they had found were those of a person belonging to a race of people who had long time ago lived in this country. That there was once a race of men on the earth whose size was about 3 times that of an ordinary man. And they were so swift and powerful that they could run alongside a buffalo and take the animal in one arm and could tear off a leg and eat the meat as they walked. These giants denied the existence of a great spirit, and when they were heard they thundered or saw lightning as they laughed and said that they were greater than either. This so displeased the great spirit that caused a rainstorm to come down, as the water kept rising higher and higher, so that it drove those proud, conceited giants from the low grounds to the hills, thence the mountains. But at the last, even the mountaintops were submerged, and those mammoth men were all drowned. And so this is an account from the Pawnee Indians that kind of sounds like the flood.
Yeah, it does.
It really does.
Whoa.
And it also mentions the Great Spirit, which is very interesting.
Oh, yes.
And this is an actual account from Buffalo Bill himself that he mentioned in his autobiography when he was staying with the Pawnee Indians. And what is actually really fascinating about the Indians, there is a book called Life Among the Paiutes, and it is written by Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins. And in here, it's the life among the Paiutes, and in their historical, what they claim to be their history, they talk about, and I'm going to quote from this book. The tribe that would even eat their own dead. Yes, they would even come up and dig our dead after they were buried and carry them off and eat them. This tribe was called the People Eaters. After my people had killed them all, the people around us called them the Seduka. It means conquered. It also means enemy. I do not know where the name of the Paiutes came from. My people say their tribe were exterminated, had reddish hair. I have some of their hair, which has been handed down from my father to his son. I have a dress which has been in our family a great many years, trimmed with this reddish hair. And now, the author of this book, Sarah Winnemucca, she actually traveled the United States and gave speeches about her history and her people, and she would always wear this dress that had this red hair on it. And and she claimed that it was from these giant beings that her people killed off because they were sick of these Nephilim that came with cannibalism, and you could see it all the way back into the garden, where I mentioned the last time when I was with your mother that in Genesis it tells us that Yah cursed the serpent to eat dust, and we know that we are made from dust. So his food is us, and so it only makes sense that his progeny would want to consume us. And you see all throughout history that where you see these Nephilim giants, you see cannibalism, and you see total debauchery of any type of humanity at all.
Yeah, wow, that is, whoa. Okay.
It's deep. It's deep.
Yeah, the connection is really there.
It is. And what's really fascinating is that with your mom's work and with Ben's work and how they came forth with the Acts of Andrew and Matthias with the city of the man-eaters, and how they literally, this book tells you how they lived their life. It was just like Sodom and Gomorrah. They had no moral value for any human. They totally consumed their flesh. Yeah. And it's fascinating that to see that this is the reason why. It's because it was all the way back. They were cursed with eating the dust.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they can't even really survive unless they consume humans, right? So
exactly. Yeah, and it's just like your modern day vampire. Where do you think the vampire mythology and lore came from? I believe it started with Cain. Yeah. I believe if you look there's an old Bible that's it's a Spanish Bible about the 1500s, and it was a illustration Bible, so it had a bunch of pictures in it, and the story where Cain and Abel fought, it actually shows Cain biting his neck like a serpent and drinking his blood. Whoa. And also, I believe it's in the book of Adam and Eve, one of those pre-Adamic books, talk about how Eve had a dream that Cain and Abel fought, and Cain was drinking Abel's blood. And Abel cried out and said, "Don't drink all my blood." And he ended up drinking the last gulp.
Whoa.
It's pretty telling.
Yeah, and that says a lot. I mean, it even makes me consider about the lycanthropy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like how these modern day, the modern day witches, or so to speak, or vampirism today is still rampant. Even the actual belief in witchcraft and Wicca is actually growing exponentially. It's very telling. But once you bring the light to these people and show these people that believe in these type of things where their beliefs actually stem from, they either run or they actually take a close look at themselves, and they're like, do I want to align myself with something like this? Because it's truly against God.
Yeah, it really is. Wow.
Jeez. Yes. But another person in history that we were all told as kids was, if you've ever heard of the story of Paul Bunyan.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Well, so this was in the Oasis Argos Press, February 8th, 1972, the Bay County, Michigan. The last report of a giant colonist with double row teeth come from the Oasis Argos Press, February 8th, 1972. This article seeks to find the jawbone of the famed Joe Frontier, who used to keep his teeth sharpened by biting hunks out of bars in the back of saloons. Frontier is believed to be the model for the American mythology giant Paul Bunyan. Frontier was killed in a barroom brawl. The article goes on. Joe's skull, which was housed for his famed teeth, was bashed in by a single blow of a carpenter's mallet in 1875, and ending the Bryce's battling career. One, Adolph Blinky Robinson was tried for the crime, but was acquitted by a judge. One of the interesting parts of the trial, that Frontier's massive skull was introduced as evidence. Old timers tell that the skull for many years was a prize exhibit in the Bay County Courthouse, where its double thick bone and double row sets of teeth were marveled at all who seen it. The jawbone disappeared sometime later after that, and was supposedly reported at the University of Michigan Dental School, it was at this University of Michigan, and it pretty much disappeared. But they housed his jaw, or his actual skull, in the courthouse, and it was actually brought in for evidence. And they mentioned how he had double sets of teeth. Yeah,
that's intense. Wow.
Which is really crazy, because if you hear most of these different stories of giants, they always have a double row sets of teeth or red hair, or they have an extra digit on the. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. They actually have a double, an extra digit on their hand.
Right.
And when the Native Americans actually would greet people, they would stick out their hand, and
right.
It wasn't
and
like
like that thing we used to always hear, how, like we used to like say it like how, and then we picked that up from the history, but obviously that was to reveal their hands, right? So
exactly, it was to see if they were of this cannibalistic tribe, because right. A Native American back in the 1500s, if they would have seen someone walking around with six digits, they would have probably killed you. Yep. Because they know from their history that those people eat people, and they were a threat.
Yep. Wow.
It's definitely interesting. And this book goes on and on. Which one was fascinating? Another fascinating. This was actually in a newspaper article where in Pennsylvania they found an unusual skull. Now the skull wasn't very big, and it wasn't abnormally long. It didn't have a double row set of teeth, but it actually had horns. And I'll show you right here.
Ooh.
If you can.
Oh wow! Why have I seen that before? Whoa! That's a trip.
Now this was actually in the New York Times, July 14th, 1916, in Sarah, Pennsylvania. It's just fascinating where this is right around this is not very far from me, but this is where I live. This is the Ohio Valley, so to speak, and this is supposedly where these giants remained. They lived where I'm actually settled right now.
Wow.
Which is fascinating, because I feel like I can just go outside, and if I really pray and seek the Father and ask him to reveal these hidden mysteries to me, I do believe that one day I'm going to eventually find something that could support the biblical narrative, meaning, just something, anything. It's all a treasure hunt to me. I'm fascinated about finding something like that, and actually getting out there and actually trying to bring forth something that could actually prove the biblical narrative.
Yeah, well, we will be praying that Abba will allow you to finish your work that he has planned for you, and we won't randomly find you disappeared.
Yeah, because if you paid attention, where a lot of people in the truth community that have came out and talked about sightings of this stuff, or actually video evidence of these type of Nephilim creatures, they're all going missing. On my TikTok, I actually talked about a man called Andy Dawson that lived up in Canada, and he was driving to work, and was looking at a mountain and seen something walking on the mountain. Now, from his vantage point, he was at least 3 to 4 miles away. So whatever he was seeing on top of that mountain must have been huge, because you could see in the video, he zooms up to it and you can actually see how big this thing is, and you can see it move, like the arms sway.
Whoa.
And he videotaped it and it went viral. And right after that happened, he started really investigating. He was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to see if that, if it was just an object up there. Maybe it was, maybe it's still there. So he drove back and it was gone. He couldn't find it. So he ended up driving up into this national park where this mountain was, and he was turned around by the national forest industry, the people that observe it or watch over it, and he was told to turn around. And now this is a free park where you can go, anyone can go there, but he was told to turn around. So he went back and he noticed that this car that actually stopped him in the mountains actually followed him back to his house, and he has it on video where there was a car sitting outside of his house. And so he ends up going back again because he just really is interested and really wants to find out what's going on. And he sees military helicopters going back and forth towards that mountain. And so there was a military presence there also.
Wow.
And so what happened after this was really, really interesting, that he actually made a video. Well, he kind of disappeared for a little bit. No one really knew where he was, or he wasn't posting anything new. And then he posted a video, and he said that all the videos were faked, that he did it for only entertainment purposes. But the way it just looked like he was being forced to actually tell the story. Right. And he was sitting there with his hands in his pocket, looking over every time he would say it was fake. Every time he said that these videos were made for entertainment purposes only, he would look over to his left or his right, like someone was coercing him to say this.
Yeah.
And so not even a day later, he posted another video, and he looked totally frantic. And he said, everything that I posted was 100% true. I'm scared for my life, and I think they're going to come after me. And he totally went blank for months, and no one really knew where he was until an independent researcher actually looked up the obituaries in Canada and actually found his obituary from about a couple weeks later after that video was posted.
Oh.
They're
Yes.
always watching.
Yes, they are. And it's definitely telling about what happened to him, because I don't know how far he got into the truth, or if he actually did find Christ or not. I pray he did, and I do pray over his soul. Yeah. But I hope that it brought him and much other people closer to the biblical narrative, just by proving that there was a modern day Nephilim out there.
Right.
And with I believe that we are in the end times, and we are the fig tree generation, that the pit will be open and these things will come back. If you read in the book of Isaiah, in the Septuagint version, it says that giants are coming back to fulfill his wrath.
Yep.
So that's something I do believe that we need to consider.
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard this story or not, but have you ever heard mention of the Kandahar giant?
Oh yes, I've covered that many times.
That instantly made me think of that. And what's funny is that I actually have a coworker that served, and she happened to be in Kandahar at some point in her military career, and I asked her about it. And I said, have you ever considered, or do you know the story about the Kandahar giant? And she was like, I've never heard of that. What are you talking about? And I told her, I was like, go look it up, see if you can find it, because it would be very interesting, because it piqued my interest, and that was the first thing I thought. That I was like, really, you served over there? Do you know about this? And she had never heard of it, so I was like, So
yeah, it's a very interesting story, the Kandahar giant. If any of you have not heard of it, L.A. Marzoli is the one who broke the story, actually, in his Watcher series. He breaks the story and he actually speaks to an eyewitness account that actually shot this thing. And it supposedly the story kind of went is there was a team of military people looking in the caves of or in the hills of Kandahar for the Taliban, and supposedly they missed their rally point. They weren't contacting back to base, and so they brought out the Green Berets as special forces to go find these guys. And they actually came down to a sort of plateau area where it was up on the mountain, but it was a plateau area where there was a cave. And as they were walking up, they started seeing military equipment on the ground, and they also seen bones. So immediately they were, on high alert. And they got to the face of the cave, and they sat there for a couple minutes, and a shrieking noise came barreling out of this cave, and what they described was about a 14-foot red hair Nephilim with a lance, a big spear, and he ended up piercing through one of the military people, one of the Green Berets, and they all immediately started shooting him. And supposedly they decapitated him by shooting him, and they called back up to base, and they came with a big helicopter and picked this thing up. And which actually is very interesting that L.A. Marzulli not only gets the eyewitness account of one of the shooters, he actually, a couple of years later, gets another eyewitness account from the helicopter. The pilot from the helicopter came out and spoke about it, and he ended up speaking to L.A. Marzulli about that as well. And what's really, really fascinating is that recently L.A. Marzulli just interviewed a person that lived out in Kandahar for his whole life, and his father his father grew up there as well, and he can remember that his grandmother was a so-called witch, and what she would do was she would take animals to the hills of Kandahar, to the mountain ranges, and leave them there for this giant, so that the giant wouldn't come down into the community and terrorize the people.
Whoa.
It's very interesting, and just wondering, like, how long have these things been hiding around? I know that they're going to be released in the end times, but just like if you've ever heard of the Solomon Island giants, that there is a presence of giants down in the Solomon Islands still to this day. It's very telling. And some of the national parks and forestry area, if you've ever looked into 411 from David Paulides, he talks about these 411 missing cases. Now, he used to be a sheriff, and he ended up dealing with a lot of the park and recreational services, and they always told him that there was something very mysterious happening in the national parks around America.
Right.
And he was always told to look into it. And eventually, once he retired, he started looking into it. And he eventually wrote 9 books on it. That's how much information he found.
Oh.
And now in his books, he only picks out the most mysterious cases. And now these are all police documents, so you can verify it with these documents and these police reports. And I'll tell you one that actually happened in Pennsylvania, which was very, very telling and interesting, that in one of the national parks, a kid was playing, and they were playing hide and go seek, and his dad was sitting on a lawn chair and was watching his kid, and he kind of seen him go behind the tree, and then he disappeared, and he could not find him. The dad ran into the woods and searched, could not find him. And then they called in the cavalry, and they spent about 3 days searching for this kid. They could not find him. Now, about 4 to 5 days later, they come, a group of hikers, supposedly, that were looking for these people. They were about 12 miles off of where they were supposed to be looking at for this kid, because this kid was very young. It was harsh elements, harsh climate outside.
Right.
So he wasn't very prepared for it. So they didn't really think he was going to go far. Well, there was a group of hikers that were in the area, kind of 12 miles, so to speak, away from where this kid went missing, and they reported finding this kid. And so they eventually go out there and they find him. And when they find this kid, he was actually peering behind a tree, like he was kind of like hiding from them. And the most mysterious thing about it is that in the distance that he got to the place of 12 miles away, it was only like a matter of 3 to 4 days. And so for a kid that age to go through, now this was like dense forestry.
Way.
For him to get there. So Les Stroud actually came out, the survivor man came out and tried to do that 12-mile hike pretty much in 3 to 4 days, and he could not do it.
No way.
He said there's no possible way that this kid could have totally just made it there. And he actually talks about how, well, they interview the kid and they ask him what happened, and he tells the people that a big bear took him and cuddled him and fed him berries.
What?
Which kind of makes you think of the Bigfoot.
Right.
Oh my.
And he was
very
probably,
interesting.
My wife put it in the chat. It says Solomon Islanders believe them to be 10 to 12 feet tall with muscular but thin bodies, long arms, and covered head to toe in dark red hair.
Wow.
Like a bear.
Yeah, like a bear, totally covered. And you think about the modern day Bigfoot sightings that everyone's seeing around the world, and I really don't know if Bigfoot is it's supposed to be some type of evolutionary creature that just wandered off. I don't believe that. I do think that there's a spiritual connection with Bigfoot, whatever it may be, a Nephilim from the old times or a Nephilim actually coming back in. I do think that there's some type of spiritual connection there, because we've never really found a dead body, and that shows that they're either intelligent enough to bury their dead, or there's some type of spiritual connection where they can come in and out, so to speak.
Right.
It's very interesting. And the whole thing with the national parks, when the United States actually took over the national park systems, they took over specific spots in the United States. And I do believe that these were hot spots for these types of creatures. If you look in Yellowstone, in the northern area of Yellowstone Park, there's many tales of dogmen walking around on bipedal 2 legs. And many of the park rangers have came out saying that they've seen a werewolf, so to speak. And so I do think that there's some type of conspiracy going on with the national parks, where the United States realized that these were hot spots for these places. So they isolated them so that they could do research on them, or that they can keep them hidden from the public. That's something I've not determined yet, but I'm very interested in finding out why.
Yeah, I always considered the national parks somewhat like mattress stores. I don't know if you've heard of this. Like, mattress stores are kind of like a front for laundering money and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I've always kind of thought of that, like national parks. Like, why do they feel it important to just keep this particular section of land untouched, right? And what's the purpose behind it? Like, yeah, and this particular aspect would make a lot more sense, because then they can do their quote unquote rituals and be able to sustain these individuals without the public knowing,
Yeah, definitely. Because even like you seen with that grandmother that lived in Kandahar, she was actually feeding this giant. And if you look in different cults around the world, there are werewolf cults that they drink blood and they do offerings to these creatures that they might know it or not, but these things could possibly be real.
Yeah, and then it reminds me of how they found a bunch of the world leaders worshiping that owl in a national park, right?
Exactly, in Bohemian Grove, yeah. Exactly. There were a bunch of big name people there. If you ever seen the actual video, Alex Jones broke it to the world, where he snuck into Bohemian Grove and actually filmed what it looked like to be Hillary Clinton and George Bush.
Yes, yeah. I've never watched the video, but I'd heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely telling. And also with the mention of Hillary Clinton, how right around the time this Kandahar Giant actually happened, there was a Rob Skiba really digs deep on this one. If you ever want to look into it, I would definitely go to Rob Skiba's YouTube channel and check this out. But right around the time before we went into Afghanistan, the first thing that we did was go over and raid the Museum of Baghdad. And supposedly what the United States Army took was about 12,000 resurrection tablets. And also they suppose it took graves out of this museum that were up to 10 to 12 foot tall sarcophagus.
Right.
And so when they actually took that out, there was an email from Hillary Clinton stating that she was looking for the location of the dead Nephilim Gilgamesh. And if you have ever looked into Rob Skiba's information or his study, he actually believes and determines that Gilgamesh was actually Nimrod. And Nimrod is the man of many names, because when he ruled on the earth, he ruled the whole entire earth. And when the language were split up by God, he split the languages up. Well, the people had the same stories of the same person, but they just told it in a different way, or told it in a different name. And I do believe, as Rob Skiba believed, that Nimrod is Orion, Gilgamesh, and all these different people mentioned in history and mythology.
Wow. Yeah, no, that actually makes perfect sense. What was it? Oh, I just had it on the tip of my head. If you've ever watched her videos, probably Alexandria, she just released a new video about the concepts of how all the world religions are actually the same one, but from the Tower of Babel. Like back in those days. And you know how they all worship the same, right? And she goes into the topic of that, of how, because of the splitting of the languages, it's all the same thing, just in different texts or different wording. So yeah, if you have the time, go check out her video if you have not already. Probably Alexandria. She gives very detailed explanation to all of it. So, and we've been watching it. That's why I've thought of it. I was like, oh my gosh, like it all ties in.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. But kind of the way I grew up, I was a big history buff, and I loved history. Mm-hmm. And there was a reoccurring theme in all the mythologies and religions around the world of how these beings came down from heaven and eventually mated with women, and they created these demigods. You look into Greek, Norse mythology, it always is this. It's the same story played over and over again, but told differently with different names.
Exactly.
Well, and I think what really brings this all together is the Book of Enoch. Once you read the Book of Enoch, it brings all mythologies, all world religions all together, and you realize that it's the same story being played over and over again. The fallen angels coming down and mating with women, creating these Nephilim offspring, these giants, these hybrids. Yeah. And that's where we get these demigods, this clash of the titans, which is mentioned in the Book of Enoch, where Uriel, I believe it's Uriel or Michael, actually comes down and whispers madness into the Nephilim, the first round Nephilim that came from the fallen angels. He whispered madness into their ears, and they eventually fought themselves in a type of civil war, which the Greeks stylized as the Clash of the Titans.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I also believe that Atlantis was actually the Tower of Babel.
Wow, that's a very
because
that's very interesting.
Yeah, because I believe that Atlantis was the city of the Nephilim, and somebody ties it. I can't remember. It was the city that Nimrod named. I can't remember the name right now, but I think it was. Say again.
sorry, I was thinking of Nineveh. I know it was Babel that he created.
Yeah.
There was a.
It was under. I want to say it starts with a T. It's slipping my mind right now. Tartaria.
Tartaria.
Yeah, or something like that. I have to go back and look, but I wish my mom was right here. She'd tell you right away what the name was. Yeah, and I believe that that's just the story of the lost city of Atlantis, because if you think about the story or the movie that the Disney made, it's like, oh, the city that went underwater, right?
Yeah.
It's just like it's right there.
Exactly. What's interesting is way back when I listened to Zen for so many years, and Zen was always into a bunch of different things, but I liked how he read everything, and he didn't give a bias on anything. He would read it for you to ingest, and if you thought it was good for reading, you took it as that, but if not, you could discard it. But he always used to read from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And if you've ever read it, it's very interesting. It talks about the whole Atlantis and Thoth, how he was an Atlantean priest king, and how he talks about that the evil side of these priesthoods, they were worshiping things from the great deep, and they were bringing up these evils from the great deep, which is one of the reasons why Atlantis was destroyed. And it actually speaks about how Thoth left Atlantis and actually started the civilization in Egypt, which is very interesting.
Wow. Do you remember what tablet that was in? Or was it just like all of the readings?
It is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. That's if you look that up, I'm pretty sure you would find it. I'm not sure of the actual tablet number itself.
Okay, yeah, it's I'm looking at it right now. It says the tablet 1, the history of thought, the Atlantean.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. The key of I might actually read some of this. Ooh.
Yeah, it's well, you got to put a biblical worldview, biblical lenses onto when you read it. But that's how I do everything. I have a biblical lens and I read through it. But it's very interesting of how it talks about these beings coming from the great deep. They took over the councils of men, and it says that when you were able to see them, their vibration was distorted and they looked snake-like, which is so funny. It just connects everything together, just like Quetzalcoatl down in the Mayan Empire, where it was a snake, it was a dragon that ate people. They would sacrifice people to this sun god, which was a dragon. Look in the Chinese, that they have the same thing, and it's always the same thing of the serpent, the Hazatan. And if you really break down the Hazatan, he's the howling one. And supposedly when dragons were alive, they howled, like they kind of like roar, which is very interesting. But it all stems back to this serpent worship, and they have a connection of cannibalism. Very interesting. But not only are there are giants and all these different things, but understanding that when the fallen angels came down, they didn't just corrupt men and women, they corrupted everything. They went after everything. And you could actually see this in the Bible of the lion men of Moab and different creatures like this. I believe the guy that Abraham bought the cave of Mamre from, his name escapes me for some reason. I forget his name. I'm sorry. But the guy, Abraham buys a cave of Machpelah from a guy that is, if you break his name down, it actually means fawn-like. So he was actually like a fawn, which if you look in the Egyptian mythology, there are people that have fawn heads and male bodies.
Right. Or goat legs and male torso.
The satyr. Yeah, the satyr and all that. Wow. And then in this book right here, this is the Encyclopedia of the Ancient Giants in North America by Fritz Zimmerman. Right here, which is another great resource for biblical giants in North America and everywhere else. But what was really fascinating is that in a large mound located south of Cautiostown, Ohio, On the ridge in the background was a site of pygmy graves. It is chanced that they were buried overlooking this portal of fairy lands, the Nephilim Chronicles in Ohio. And supposedly they found the skeletons reduced to chalky ashes were 3 to 4.5 feet long, smaller than the Indian or mound skeletons. These pygmies have led to much conjecture this far. They pretty much found in Ohio. They found pygmy like little mounds with little remains in there. And if you look in the actual record on these newspaper articles, you could find so many different type of creatures all throughout history. And another similar between the ancient Scots and the story is the belief of fairies resided in these mounds. And Lewis and Clark actually reported while in South Dakota with the Suckus people, they traveled to juncture the people of the Vermont and Missouri rivers to see the mountain of the little people. Lewis wrote in his journal that little people were devils, and in the Omaha and the Osage would not let anyone go near them. So even the Native Americans knew that these people were not to be, played with. Don't mess around with them. And Lewis and Clark actually, in Lewis's journal, he mentions the actual pygmy people. And there's a book that I have. It is called The Suppressed History of America, and it is supposed, and this is kind of the memoirs of Meriwether Lewis, and it is concerning the murder of Meriwether Lewis and his mystery discoveries. So when Lewis and Clark were going through the United States, Meriwether Lewis was actually discovering and hearing all these legends of these giant races, and he actually supposedly discovered something, a giant bone, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And he was going to come public with his discoveries, and supposedly the Smithsonian murdered him, actually. And if you read this book, it actually goes through and tells you how Meriwether Lewis was pretty much killed off for what he was looking into. Which is very fascinating, because it's always with the people that are speaking the truth, they totally aim at and they come after. But this type of research, this type of knowledge could change the fabric of history. It could totally change the mindset of so many people. I have such a hard time with most of the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, because when I bring up these subjects, they laugh it off as mythologies and, lores and myths and legends, when really these things were real. And if we could actually, get some solid evidence proving that these things are real, which I know for a fact they are, just because the Bible mentions it. But if we could, it could definitely turn the tides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe that the reason they hide the information is a twofold reason. One, because of its importance, it actually it reveals the existence of Yahweh or God himself. It proves that he does exist because it's been written in that way. And two, it makes people see a different, actually scratch that, it reveals to people that, like you said, the stories aren't myths, they're real. And if these particular stories could be real, then maybe Yahweh himself is real.
Exactly.
And if they can divert and pervert the concept that there is a God, they're already winning, right? So but they're only winning the battles, not the war. So, but Yeah.
But like, yeah, with this belief, you know, it totally destroys all these different lies that have been put in our life, like the evolutionary theory of Charles Darwin. And, you know, it
Exactly.
totally destroys that in one swoop, you know? And that's why I think during this, it was right around that same time where Charles Darwin was bringing forth this Darwinism, is when the Smithsonian stepped in and actually started destroying these giant bones. And there's actually mention on record of archaeologists being paid by the Smithsonian to destroy bones. I mean, there's many of accounts of that happening.
I mean,
and if you see,
they've got 3 different movies about the Smithsonian keeping magic in their freaking vaults and everything. The night at the museum, right? I mean, it's right there in plain sight.
Right
like,
there in your face.
And it's old Egyptian magic. It's just like, oh my gosh, like.
Yeah. Once you become a truth seeker, you start really realizing that they put the truth in the movies and lie to us in the news.
Exactly.
It's just really how it is. But another thing I wanted to mention, I'm not sure if you guys were aware of this, but in the truth community, I like to branch out and listen to a lot of different people. And kind of in my journey to truth, I started out with Zen Garcia and Rob Skiba, and eventually I found Now You See TV, and I actually still listen to them, even though they departed ways from Zen Garcia and Rob Skiba and stuff like that. I do find their work to be interesting nonetheless, but I try not to put a strain on truth. You know, I try to just analyze truth as what it is and take it for what I can see it. And one thing that Now You See TV has brought forward is that there was a so-called plate found on Mount Hermon. Now, a plate is like an old, pretty much rock that has a description on it. Okay. And supposedly, a Sir Charles Warren in 1869 was climbing Mount Hermon, and he was 9,232 feet above sea level. And he found this plate on Mount Hermon that had some inscription on it, and it was kind of a limestone. But when he found it, he also found a temple that was kind of on top of Mount Hermon, and the temple was in a spiral shape, kind of like the Fibonacci symbol, or a seashell, so to speak. But the temple was in a spiral shape. And on the plate, it was an unknown language, and it kind of looked like it was Greek, but he couldn't decipher it. So he tried to carry it down the mountain, and it was very heavy. He ended up breaking it in 2, but he brought it down, and they ended up translating it, and what they determined that the language was some form of the most ancient Greek that they could find. But the translation of what was on this plate was very telling. And now it says this: according to the command of the greatest, most holy God, those who took the oath proceed from here. And if you know from reading the book of Enoch that the fallen angels came down, or if you know from the book of Enoch, the 200 watchers came down, and 22 chief angels of those 200 watchers descended upon Mount Hermon, and they took an oath. And that's what Mount Hermon means, is where they took the oath. And now this slate that was found in 1869 by Charles Warren says that according to the command of the greatest, most holy God, those who took the oath proceed from here. So is this a subscription by the fallen angels themselves, proving that they were actually there and they took an oath? And what's really interesting is that if you look at the Paramount logo in the beginning of the movies, you see the mountain with these stars around it. Well, Rob Skiba pointed out, if you count those stars, there's actually 22 stars. And that's actually the same amount of chief angels or chief fallen watchers that went around this mountain. And if you actually watch the preview, I broke this down really good in a TikTok video. They actually come down and they hover over the waters. Well, we hear that from Genesis, from when the Spirit actually came out and hovered over the waters. Right. And so they put these little bits of truth in our face So I believe that when the judgment comes, they will try to get an scapegoat saying that, hey, we showed you, but you were too dumb to see it. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but for the ones who do see it, we see through their lies, and we see their little hidden symbols and their messages in the movies, TV shows, games, and all that. And you could really break a lot of things down with just looking into a little entry logo.
Wow, that's fascinating. Like, I had just heard this maybe a couple months ago, and it actually shook me to my very core because I know that my background is I definitely have Nephilim blood, and and I was told this by my dad. He was doing a teaching, and I'd never heard it before until when he talked about it, and he mentioned that the same mountain that Yeshua or Jesus had his transfiguration was Mount Hermon.
Wow.
And it blew my mind away because of the significance of that, right?
Yeah.
And when I heard it, it was almost like God spoke directly to me, and he was like, my blood has not only been spilled for the humanity, but for those that are of the corrupted line as well.
Yes, I do believe so.
And the significance of the transfiguration was that his body was, being transformed into something new, right?
Yes.
And it shook me, and then it made me believe that not only can I be saved even because of my blood, but everybody like us can as well. And it just it shattered my reality, and I was so thankful for it. Yeah, because I did not know that, because that story always fascinated me about him going up there. And then, he had, the disciples fell asleep, and then they woke up, and then he was coming down, and I believe it was Hanok, Enoch, and Eliyahu, Elijah, that were with him, right? And they were the only other two people that did not see death, and they're supposed to come back, right? So it was just like, whoa, it totally blew my mind away, so... Yeah, whenever I hear that now, the Mount Hermon or the mountain that they, sat on top, and I believe they were petitioning Enoch himself to pray, to ask God for forgiveness or something like that. So I believe that was the same mountain. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was after they descended down and mated with the daughters of men.
Yep.
They went to Enoch because he was the righteous teacher, and they petitioned him. And I actually believe, I believe it was Moses and Elijah, if I'm not mistaken, on the Mount of Transfiguration, which that always, because with the two witnesses, the whole mystery of the two witnesses, I do believe it is Elijah and Enoch, because they never seen death, like you said. But it always fascinates me he brought Moses and Elijah onto the Transfiguration Mountain, which was very telling. But if you look into Nathan Reynolds, his information, because he was put through some very, very traumatic things, and he speaks about things that were put inside of him to make to taint his blood, to totally transform him into something, the Ubermensch, or what the Nazis tried to create, this super soldier. He actually talks about some of this stuff, and it took him a while to get through this stuff, but he has found the true way, and he is set apart, and he's walking the true narrow path. Yes. And I believe anyone can turn from their wickedness or any type of thing. Even these Illuminist families, even the top people themselves, if they would just remove the scales from their eyes and repent and seek the Father, seek his face with their whole heart, and do the commandments and believe in Yeshua, they would be saved. Anyone, I believe anyone can. And Nathan Reynolds brings up a very, very interesting thing, that Noah preached I believe it was 300 years before the flood, and he was preaching to hybrids. He was literally, because he was the only pure one in his generation. He was pure in his. The word tamim, if you actually look into it, it's actually like a red heifer. It's pure, genetically pure. So he was genetically pure in his generation. So all around him must have been some type of hybridized creatures. So he was preaching to these hybridized creatures to repent.
Mm-hmm.
And what's very interesting is that even though Cain was of the seed line of the devil, which I believe, because it's undeniable when you read Genesis that Yah is cursing the serpent, and he's cursing Eve, and he looks at the serpent and says, your seed is cursed, and her seed, is going to crush your head. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute, whose seed? Wait, yeah. the devil has seed? And I'm like, oh my God. And then that took me down a whole rabbit hole itself. But if you keep reading on, it says that, God tells Cain that if you do well, you will be accepted. So I believe even Cain had the to be saved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, think about it. Yahweh spoke to him directly, too. And he was like, all he had to do was repent, right? All he had to do was admit what he did. But like his mom and like his, stepdad, he was like, oh, no, let me divert the blame to something else, So.
Am I my brother's keeper? Yeah.
Right.
It's and that's, and I see that, and I struggle with that daily of, that it's like that fleshly, worldly life still clinging on to me, because my life, I really did have a kind of a rough upbringing. I believe I was meant to be put through it to be the person I am today, and to be able to get through the things that may be coming to fruition very soon.
Yeah.
But it's very telling of, the way my life could have went if I would have just condoned into temptation and just kept going down this path of sin, which I was going down. Until I totally found him. And it happened in the most peculiar way. I was looking into ancient aliens and the mysteries, and I really liked all the just the hidden mysteries in the world, and trying to figure out, well, why am I here? Are we just an alien experiment? Because most researchers now are most people that look into this type of stuff, and also with the evolutionary theory, they're realizing that the evolutionary theory is broke. It doesn't have any scientific evidence. So they're trying to move away from this type of research, and they're trying to bring forth this research of panspermia, where they believe an ancient race came here millions of years ago and seeded us. And this is the whole ancient aliens thing. And if you look, right around that time when this idea was popping around, was ancient aliens being pumped into the brains of all the young people, and I was one of them. Yeah. And I was caught hook, line, and sinker, bro. It was bad, man. And the one episode where I totally realized that they were pushing an agenda is the episode of Lucifer. They did an episode of Lucifer, and they made him to look like the good guy. They made him looking like he brought us knowledge from this evil dictator God. And I was like, man, they are pushing something. They are really pushing something. So that's, I really started realizing that, started reading the Bible, because I realized all the evil in the world, and how most of the celebrities and the world leaders really worshipped the devil, and it was out in the open. And so I ran to the Bible, and sooner or later I ended up finding Rob Skiba's videos of the Nephilim, and then finding Zen Garcia, and never turned away after that, and just kept going forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of I think around the same time, that's when they started they released that movie Avatar, right?
Yeah.
And the irony in that is that there's Awa connecting to the tree and all of that stuff, but the part that fascinated me about it was the fact that there was a blind Satanist that prayed heavily to Lucifer and said, "Show me what you look like and I will paint you." And he was blind, and he painted him, and he looked just like the Navi in the movie.
Wow.
Yep. And
that's amazing.
Yeah. And so it fascinated me because I was like, oh, interesting. They're aliens from another planet that almost look exactly like Hasatan himself. That's quite fascinating to me. It's like,
it kind of rings a bell too, because if you've ever heard of the Blue Bloods in occultic, religions and stuff like that,
I've heard the show, but I've never like really heard of it as far as Well, what is
supposedly
that?
these creatures may have blue blood, and if you actually look into the Hindu mythologies, they have bluish gods. Their gods are blue, kind of, so to speak, like their skin.
Wow.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's definitely something I'm going to look into.
Yeah, I suggest checking it out because my mom told me that, and like we actually really enjoyed that movie, because it's the concept that we enjoyed was the fact that you're defending a people that cannot defend themselves, right? And they're fighting against these overtaking Americans, essentially, and they're taking over the land so that they can gather all the resources from underneath, right? And it resonates for us here in Hawaii because that's basically what happened here. It was a legal occupation, right? So that story touches us in a certain way, and we're like, yeah. It's extremely relatable. It's like, screw them, and we'd join the other side if we had the chance, right? So it's like, that's why it was a very powerful movie for us. But then when we found out that aspect, we were just like, that makes much more sense.
It really does.
Yeah, because they're trying to make them seem like they're, like they're okay, like normalize that kind of thing, right? So,
yeah, that's why I tell all my friends and my family that, over the past 50 years, we have been bombarded with these images of aliens, UFO contact, and all these different things. When, there really has not been any evidence, but movies, TV shows, they've been pumping this nonstop into the so-called media outlets, and it's totally taking over with even our kids. It's in the smallest of cartoons. I have young children, and anytime they even want to watch something, I totally have to. Now I don't like them watching things at all, but I totally have to watch the whole entire thing just to make sure they're not putting in these little nuggets that they want to implant into my children. And most of it, you could see that they've been pushing this alien agenda, that they are prepping us for the return of the gods when they come back. And when they come back, I believe they're going to announce that they are our gods, just like the panspermia idea, that they came here millions of years ago and seeded us, and they are back to either help us, destroy us, or cure different ailments and stuff like that, or proceed us to the next evolutionary state of consciousness being, which is the new age lie. And it's the same thing that was told in the garden by Hasatan: is, do you want to be like God? You can be just like God. All you got to do is eat this. Yeah, and it's the same lie told over and over again.
I mean, he posed the same question to Jesus, right? All this could be yours if just eat. It's just like he's got the same tactic. It's just we're so dumb to not learn from our history. And Yahweh himself says, "My people perish from what?
Lack of knowledge."
Lack of knowledge. And
exactly,
that's all it is. It's like, and it brought up an interesting point that you made too, because I don't know if you know this, you probably do, that the FBI came out and admitted that there were aliens.
Have they? Yeah, yes. I think I looked into that a little bit. Yeah, slow. It's funny because like 10 years ago, if you would have spoke about aliens or any type of UFO contact, you were totally taken off the internet. But now it's just like, the Navy's coming out with showing UFOs in the sky. Now, I'm not going to say that these things ain't real. Obviously, they are. The amount of evidence supporting that these these creatures are real is overwhelming, but what are they is really the question.
Yeah, but from it coming from quote unquote outer space, no, they're coming right from our backyard, guys. Like, so yeah, and I find it like now that was released, I kind of thought about it and I was like, you know what? A lot of the stuff that they believed back in the 20s was like, you know, like the 20 years ago was actually almost exactly spot on. You know, these eyewitness accounts and all this stuff. It's just they were missing that one element of the whole outer space aspect. And it's like, but now the FBI's out here saying, oh yeah, no, it's real. And it's like, but you guys just denied all of these people all of these years, and now you're gonna come out and say, oh, now it is. Well, guess what? My ideas aren't as far-fetched as you might think, too, I guess, because let me just go ahead and put some tin foil on my head, and you can prove my aspect 20 years from now, too.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy.
What's really telling is that if you've ever looked into Aleister Crowley, and he did this sex ritual magic in the deserts of... I believe where the Roswell crash actually happened, like 3 to 4 years prior to it happening. Mm-hmm. But supposedly it was the Aliantra working, I believe so. But what he did was he opened this portal, and supposedly an entity came forth that he called it Lamb. And in his journals, he actually drew a description of this entity. And if you look at it, this is before the whole UFO alien gray phenomenon started happening. So no one really knew what these things looked like. But Aleister Crowley drew what looked like a modern day gray alien. And it was a demon that was, or a spirit, some type of evil spirit that was he was connecting with, and he was brought forth, and this is what Aleister Crowley seen. And it's just funny that if you look right after that happened, the Roswell incident occurred. Because if you look into his students, who were Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, supposedly they went back to that desert and did the same sex ritual magic, but they weren't knowledgeable enough to close this so-called portal. And then the alien phenomenon started happening.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it seems to me that the fig tree generation, this generation, a lot of things are coming forth. And if you look into the truth community, there is a lot of new ideas now. I mean, even from flat Earth to biblical cosmology to Tartaria, hidden history, mud floods. The truth community is totally exploding now. And it's really hard to keep track of what everyone's looking into nowadays. But I just want to mention to everyone to stay wary, stay vigilant, and know that sometimes they might put disinformation in the truth communities, because I do see a lot of that now, disinformation spread into the truth community. But we just need to stay grounded in the word, and knowing that that is the most sharpest thing in existence, and it cuts through all their lies. The word, the Bible, so to speak, the word of God.
Yeah, I knew we were. It clicked for me when we were reading through the book of Enoch, and it said this book is for a generation to come, right before the end. And I was just like, we found it now?
Yeah, we found it right in that time frame. Yeah, the fig tree generation when Israel bloomed, because Yeshua tells us that, what is parable of the fig tree, and the fig tree is Israel, when Israel will bloom as a nation again. And that happened in 1943. Yep. Then we had the Book of Enoch rediscovered, and then we had the Dead Sea Scrolls rediscovered as well. And it's just like Rob Skiba always said, it was like a chess match between the devil and God. It was, move, counter move, move, counter move. And it seems that it's starting to speed up really, really rapidly in these days.
I mean, we had like just the beginning of this year alone, right? I mean, people keep saying so much happened in just 1 month, and they're right. Like a lot happened. It's so wild.
And the amount of truth that's coming out is phenomenal. I mean, I personally I can't keep up with it. It's like the never ending rabbit hole. You just continue to go down and down and down.
Yeah, but I get excited, learning about these things, because it's like, for me, it's like, in a way, for me it reveals more and more that yes, if these things can exist, then obviously the one that I serve really does exist. Like
that's the thing I keep in my mind, is that these things may be coming back, these Nephilim, these giants, but fear him that can kill both soul and body. You just, and that really hits home for me, because if we are on his side, who can stand against us?
Exactly.
You see that in the story of Joshua, where Joshua goes through the land of Canaan, and he sends the spies out, and they come back and they're scared to death. They're like, we are like grasshoppers in their sight. And Caleb's like, we can go take the city. It's no problem, because he had that fear of God, and then with that fear of God brings that knowledge and that wisdom that anything that steps in their way, our Father will totally take care of it.
Yeah. And that's why they had to wander the desert all over again, right? For another, 40 years? Because the entire generation doubted Abba, except for Joshua and Caleb himself. And then God told Moses, like, hey, sorry, they gotta wander the desert some more. So
it's a refining area. That's why God, Yah says that He's gonna refine us like gold. He's gonna totally keep pounding on us to make us better, to make us like a sharpened edge, or also so to speak, like a sifting. He sifts out the people that really don't have a love for him. And that's one thing that even through this world and through all these distractions, I continue to try to have a love for the truth and a love for my Father in heaven.
Yep, because greater is he who is in us, right, than he who is in the world. So.
Yep, yes sir.
All right, we're going to pull our camera back on real quick. And are you done? I want to see that first. do you have any more information? Because by all means, keep going.
Cool. I just have a little bit more on I was going to get into the magnetic mountain, but if you guys have to go, I totally understand.
No. We're hanging out. We got a date later, and we can show up anytime. So.
Wait, I want to hear more about the magnetic mountain.
I'll make it pretty quick.
Yeah, she said she wanted to hear more about the magnetic mountain. So.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, we kind of started having a conversation, and I that's my fault too. I talk a lot.
Sorry. I can tell that me and you have a lot in common. And we can probably talk for hours.
Probably.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm gonna start.
All right. Awesome. So, looking into the biblical cosmology and this belief of our world, you come to terms with, are there lands that they're hiding from us? And that was one thing that I really tried to look into, and kind of looking at the ancient world maps. And if you actually see behind me, I'm going to take the camera for a second. I have a map, which is called the Mercator map. And this map actually shows on there these 4 mountains. Let's see if you can see it.
Yeah, I see it.
Yes, these 4 different mountains with this middle, and with a Rupus Negra in the middle of it, which is transcribed to the Black Rock. Now, looking through mythology and different myths and legends throughout the world, you can actually see that most religions and mythologies speak about this mountain. The Hyperboreans, which is this land supposedly was, with these 4 different continents surrounding this mountain. And if you look in different mythologies, like Norse mythology, they believed it as Asgard. Also in the Chinese, the Tartar area, or kind of the Tartarians, it was the Unchained Gardens. In the Buddhist, it was called Serenia. In the Hindus, it was Mount Meru. In Tibet, it was Haida. And then in the Greek, it was Mount Olympus. And so throughout all these different religions, you have these occurrences of a mountain of the gods, so to speak, of where the gods mingled, where they lived in this mountain. Let me just get back to my notes here. And so what's really fascinating is that there is a book called The Inventura Fortunata, and is an Arctic exploration of accounts of Nicholas of Lynn. And now this is a exploration of all the earlier people that journeyed to Antarctica, or to the Arctic regions in the northern sector of the world. And in this book, it's very telling of what they discovered. Now I'm going to quote from the book of Inventura Fortunata. The 14th century writings of the Inventura Fortunata by Nicholas D. Lynn, as well known as Jacobus Conan, discussed the magnetic mountain being so powerful that it pulled the nails right from the explorer's boat, then the enclosing whirlpools and the 4 rivers bordering the mountain. And so these are firsthand account witnesses of what they saw in the north. And they speak of this mountain, this black rock, being a magnetite rock, and it totally pulled the nails from the boat that they were sailing on as well. And to kind of go back to mythology and different religions, the Greeks kind of stylized the indwelling seas of the 4 rivers coming down to a monster called Charybdis. And this monster, they believe that this monster, it was a monster, but it was actually the four rivers coming together in a whirlpool, so to speak, underneath this mountain. Mm-hmm. Also, in the Norse beliefs or mythologies, they called it Helvelgumr, which was this ancient sea monster. They believed was a sea monster, but it really wasn't.
Sorry, say the name again.
Helvelgumr.
Helvelgumr. Okay.
I'm sorry, I might be butchering the name.
No. I just had my ears. So.
I'm sorry, you're good. You're good. Also, Jason and the Argonauts, they mentioned this place as well as it being a land filled with pygmies, supposedly little people, and the actual soil itself was white. So the dirt was actually white there, which is very interesting. But to bring it to a biblical sense, if you look in the Psalms 48 too, beautiful in elevation is the joy all over the earth, Mount Zion in the far north of the city of the great king. And also in Genesis 2:10, and a river went out from Eden to water the garden. From there it was parted and became 4 heads. And so if you remember the picture I showed you with the 4 different rivers going through these 4 different islands, right, it seems to me that the Garden of Eden was in the North Pole. And if you look into Zen Garcia's research, he actually believes that the North, or the Garden of Eden, was taken up into one of the heavens. And I do believe so, but I do believe that there is a remnant of the Garden of Eden that could possibly still be in the North Pole. Also in Matthew 4:8 and Luke 4:5, Yeshua was taken to this high mountain and he was able to see all the kingdoms of the world. Well, if you look at that from a biblical worldview, of a biblical cosmology, knowing that we're not on a spinning ball, he's seen everything. So if he's seen everything, he must have been on the highest mountain possible. So did Hazatan take Yeshua to this Mount Meru, the mountain of the gods, the same mountain that Job speaks about, of where he goes and meets with the rest of the congregation of angels, this great mountain? And so also there is a letter from John Dee, which was a very famous occultist back in the day, and he was actually great friends with one of the queens. But he wrote a letter to Mercator, furthering his quotes of Canny's description of the North regions. In the midst of the four countries is a whirlpool into which there empties these four indrawling seas which divide the north, and the waters rush around and descend into the earth, just as if one were pouring it through a funnel, a filter funnel. It is 4 degrees wide on every side of the pole. That is to say 8 degrees altogether, except that right under the pole lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea, and it is all of magnetite stone, and it is as high as the clouds. And so Mercator is the guy that made that map that was behind me. And he mentions, or John Dee mentions to Mercator, that this mountain reaches to the heavens. Also, in a map of John Ryakin, which appears at Rome in 1508, discoveries that under the Arctic Pole, there is a high magnetic rock, 33 German miles. And also, there are mentions that the explorers going into the northern regions, they would have to build their boats with wooden nails because of the actual immense power of this magnetic rock. And what's very fascinating about the black rock is that if you look into who owns pretty much the world, who owns, has this share stakes and has their hand in every single pot, is this company called BlackRock. And they totally own everything. And it just makes, it's just funny that they would name their company that. And if you look, there's been a lot of researchers that have been looking into this magnetic mountain, this Rupus Negra, this black rock, so to speak. And if you go on this app, it's called Windy. It's an app that you could see the wind currents and stuff like that. Well, they were looking at the North Pole, and there was something blocking the wind that was 33 miles in diameter, and it looks like it reaches to heaven, kind of, so to speak. The wind totally like stops and goes right around it. So whatever is there is a huge thing that is the wind is not going through; it's going right around it. And there's a lot of researchers that are really looking into this, this research right now, and I do believe that is prevalent because a lot of people like to look into Antarctica and went down there. I do believe that the North Pole is much more fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the way I view it is that, like, you know, the Earth is flat, circular, right? And if we consider it like that, the point is right in the middle.
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah, everything's north, but it's not in the way that we understand it. It's not like, oh, like if we curve up, it's more just like, just go straight. Like,
exactly.
So,
just go to the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, go to the middle. So, yeah, it was funny because my mom and my dad, they went on a trip to try and prove that the Earth was flat, essentially, in their own way, and they were trying to show people that there was a cutoff from Hawaii was like the farthest west you could go, and then New Zealand or the Philippines was like the furthest east you could go, and they wanted to go on the trip to like show that the ship actually goes down towards Antarctica and then wraps all the way around through like Russia and whatnot, and then shows up on the other side. But my mom actually they disproved themselves. And what's crazy is that they headed west the entire time, and so it was like, so our understanding of it changed, where it's like, oh yeah, it's not like a paper, like the world's not like a paper, but it's actually like, you know, very extremely circular. It goes right around. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. And then it proves that also that there is a northern point to every part of the earth. Yeah, so, and it would explain why every time you pull out a compass, right? It always points to that northern area.
In which, if you were on a ball, why wouldn't there be one on the southern point? You know what I mean? If you're on a ball, it should be the exact same, but it's totally not.
Yeah.
And this brings up that exploration, that just excitement of looking for new things. If they're hiding, I mean, because if you look at a world map today, you're not going to see those 4 continents with those rivers and that mountain in the middle of it. You can only find that in 1500s maps and prior to that. Anything prior to 1500s, you're going to see ice and water up there. But the ancients knew better. They all knew better. And if look, there's a book that's called Paradise Found by William F. Warren. Zen Garcia actually sells this book on his website. And this is Paradise Found. And he goes through all the religions of the world, proving that all the religions of the world believe that they came from the North Pole, the Garden of Eden, so to speak.
Yep, makes sense.
It does.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and it makes me really want to go up there. But you would probably need some extreme gear to get all the way up into there. But it's just fascinating because even your mom in a previous video with Zen was speaking about how in the north, this is where these creatures, this is where the abysmal chasm is. This is where these creatures are going to come. So kind of probably don't want to go up there, but just to see the magnificent, I would love to see, the splendor of that, and to discover something that the world has totally forgotten.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a couple people, eyewitness accounts. So
yeah.
Like Admiral Byrd, I believe. If you heard that name, you know that he took a little trip to some alien areas, right? So
yeah.
And then there's another story that we were actually listening to in Colorado. I can't remember the name, but it was like a dad and his son took an actual boat up there.
The fisherman. Yeah.
The fisherman, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We were listening to the somebody reading it while we were in Colorado, and driving around and to all the different places, and it totally fascinated me, and it just blew my mind away. So people have been there. So
yeah, exactly. I think we should definitely keep these eyewitness accounts, just like the book Adventure of Fortunata, which is an eyewitness account of the Arctic explorations. I really do think that we should keep these, in actual print copy, just in case if they decide to start deleting things that, we've already proven that they have been erasing our history time and time again.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah, brother. Well, I really appreciate you guys letting me on here. It was awesome for you guys to have me on. If you guys have any questions, just let me know.
There was actually a question in the chat earlier. Hold on, I gotta pull it up. Glad I remembered it. Let's see. Give me a minute to find it. Alright, sorry, it might take me a minute, so hold on just a second.
You're all good.
It was a while back. Oh yeah, there it is. There's the map.
I actually have a bigger one. This one is a 1500s map of the flat Earth, and it actually shows Antarctica free of ice, which is actually really awesome.
Wow.
But it actually shows the 4 continents in the middle with the actual mountain. And there's a chapter in the Book of Enoch. It talks about when he goes south and he actually sees these great beasts and these and these crazy creatures. But if you look very closely, you can see like creatures on this map. It's very interesting.
Maybe we should get a map for this room.
Yeah, that would actually be really cool. We can hang it up on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, right in the back, so everyone can see it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use a TV during the lessons so that they can use like a PowerPoint and then just like flip through it. So
Nice.
yeah, probably just sneak it in there every slide or something. Every other slide. Subliminal messaging.
Yep. You gotta, fight fire with fire sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. We're talking to our chiropractor today, and she's a believer too. And she has her daughter wear all these really positive things on her shirts, so that every time she looks in the mirror, it says like "Be yourself" or "You're beautiful the way you are," that kind of thing. And I was like, "Oh look, you're subliminally messaging your child. That's so great." And she's just like, "Isaac, come on." I was like, "I know, that's what we're trying to do." But I can't find the question. Man, I'm bummed out because I happened to see it and I was like, "Ooh, that was a good question." But I'm sorry, whoever wrote the question. I should have remembered at least who wrote it. But yeah, I was so fascinated by everything you were talking about. I was like, "Oh, that's a question." Anyway. But yeah, thank you for being on our show. Thank you so much for taking the time out to teach what you have, the wisdom and the knowledge that you've acquired, so that people can hear it. Go ahead.
I want to add something with the whole magnetic mountain and just the idea of like nails even coming out of the ships. Like if you look at Yod He Vav He's name, the meaning behind his name. It's
behold the hand, behold the nail.
Yeah, so like I kind of just tied that in together with what I was thinking, like, oh, isn't it crazy to think that even the nails are like repelled, but like it's the actual people that like stick the nails into Yeshua, but leaving like his crown, and it's like it like sort of ties together in what I think is like, oh my gosh, like what way to steer people away from the truth than an actual compass pointing the wrong direction. Or like like
yeah.
I think what you're trying to tie it together is that the nails in a way didn't just symbolize him being hung on the cross, but the enemy trying to cut the lifeline.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's why I was like, sitting here like,
yeah. That's pretty interesting because when they took him down, if you read in the Gospel of Nicodemus, it says that Satan was totally deceived until the very end. He was like, oh, we got Jesus of Nazareth. He's coming down now, and Hades, the entity, hell itself, is like, is this the same person that called Lazarus up with one voice? He was like, yeah, if that's him, don't bring him down. Don't bring him down at all. And he found out very quickly that it was him.
Yeah.
He broke open the gates of brass.
Yeah.
Totally destroyed them. Yep.
To death.
Stole back the key.
And Hades. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say that little bit. But
No, that was good, babe. Because in his name, right? Behold the hand, behold the nail. Yod He Vav He, right? And I always love that too, because it proved that yes, he is God himself. Because
exactly
how he saved humanity is literally in his name.
Yep.
So,
exactly. If you look at the name of Yeshua, though, and you break it down the same way, Yeshua's name means the one who destroys I'm sorry. It means Yeshua's name means the hand that destroys the establishment of the eye. And if you look up what that establishment of the eye, that whole thing, man, he came to destroy that. What does the Bible say? Yeshua came to destroy the works of the devil. And who comes down to destroy the works of the devil? The hand. Who is the hand? The right hand of Yah.
Yep.
You can't separate that. It's deep, man. It's really deep.
That is that stuff that I love about him, is that the more we learn about all of this stuff, the more he is revealed in it. And it's almost like he had control of all of it.
The whole time, yeah. So to speak.
It's almost like he knew.
Yeah. Alpha and Omega.
Yep.
He knew it from the beginning and the end, you know?
Yep.
He knew it.
Yep.
So.
Oh my gosh. Well, we'll go ahead and end in some prayer. You prayed, right? Yeah. Opening, I'll close. Okay. Thank you, Abba, so much again for having our brother Zach Lewis come on and be so willing to come on to the show and give his wisdom again and the things that you've revealed to him. I pray that you continue to reveal all of the truth that you wish for him to know before it is time for us to be called home. Father, we thank you for another amazing day, another amazing walk with you. I pray for everybody that has tuned in and listened as well, for all the prayers that we may have missed or may not have missed. Father, your will be done in all things, and that's all we can really ask for, is that your will be done, because as we have seen throughout history, it is very apparent that your will be done regardless of whatever we decide, because guess what? Every knee will bow and every tongue will confess whether you are a believer or not. So let's go ahead and believe in you before that time comes. We praise you and glorify you. We thank you for all things that you have given to us and all things that you have taken away from us. And thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Thank you. Yay.
Awesome, brother. Thank you guys so much for this.
Yes, and thank you again for
awesome.
coming on. We will keep in touch, obviously.
Awesome. Awesome.
And then we'll, if you have anything else you wish to share, if you want to come back on, give you even like a half an hour thing of something that you found, by all means, hop on. Like, we'd love to hear it. We can make a whole thing about it. It would be awesome. So, but we will trust Yah to keep our paths straight, and whatever He has for us, we'll keep listening to that. So,
Awesome. Thank you so much again.
Thank you again for coming on. So, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and sign off. We hope you have an amazing week. Please get some rest. We will be praying for your hedges of protections to stay mighty and strong, and that Abba will keep us from temptation, but lead us into Him, not all evil. Why was I saying it like that?
I know, I was like, wait.
I was like, no, lead us away from all evil. But just keep us on His path.